Good afternoon. I'm Joe Nye, Dean of the Kennedy School of Government, and I welcome you all to this very special occasion to honor John F. Kennedy, Jr. We're particularly fortunate that Senator Ted Kennedy, Carolyn Kennedy, her daughter Rose, and other members of the Kennedy family were able to join us today. About a year ago, with the help of the Institute of Politics, we embarked on a planning process to bring this space, the Forum, into the 21st century. It was originally envisaged by Graham Allison and Ira Jackson, as well as Frank Stanton, who helped to get the original gift from the ARCO Corporation, as a center forum in the Greek sense, which would bring the school together. And it has indeed filled that role very well. It has hosted some 2,000 events by major world leaders, heads of state, and elected officials over the years. Some of those officials are with us today. Our students often refer to the Forum and the events that occur in the Forum as the fifth course or sixth course that they take at the Kennedy School, because it is so inspirational in terms of the debates that go on here. And anybody who's come in here at a noontime knows it is abuzz with activity. It is indeed the heart of the school. And even on somber occasions, if you'd been here on September 11th, 2001, you would have realized that the Forum was the place where this community came together. So in that sense, the Forum is very much the heart of the Kennedy School. In that sense, we're deeply grateful to the Institute of Politics and its board for the generous gift that has brought the technology that was necessary to bring this Forum into the 21st century. And I'm deeply grateful to the IOP for supporting this. I'm grateful to President Lawrence Summers for his support of the transformation of the Forum. But I want to single out one individual, a member of our staff named Pete Atkinson. Pete Atkinson sat here all summer, sitting on top of the contractors, making sure this was done. And when I walked in here in late August to teach a class, and it was all still torn apart, I thought it couldn't be done. I'm also grateful to the Atlantic Richfield Foundation that's graciously recognized the critical gift from the Institute of Politics and joins us in celebrating the renaming of the Forum space, and they will continue to be recognized through an annual lecture. To help us celebrate this legacy, Frank Stanton, who is centrally involved in the founding gift for the Forum, has given to the school a photograph of the first televised presidential debate, the famous Nixon-Kennedy debate of 1960, which he helped to organize as president of CBS, and it is indeed subscribed by the two candidates. He has also given us a wonderful line drawing of this space as it was originally conceived. Another friend of the school has joined us this afternoon. Ms. Margot Howard has recently presented to the school a brilliant bust of John F. Kennedy by Salvador Dali. In keeping with his surrealist heritage, Dali used paper clips as part of the sculpture to represent President Kennedy's desire to find a solution to the paperclip bureaucracy, which he believed to be the bane of every president. This afternoon, you will hear a lot more about the history of the Forum and about John Kennedy, Jr., who throughout his adult life maintained very close ties with the school, serving as a member of the Institute of Politics Senior Advisory Committee for 15 years. And having his name on our Forum wall will serve as a vibrant reminder of John's many important contributions to our institution. The Forum is the hub of more than just the visitors that are hosted here and more than just the mingling of our diverse student body and larger community. It's the intersection of the mission of the Kennedy School and the Institute of Politics as we work together to train students of today as leaders for tomorrow, to inspire public service, and to promote greater understanding and cooperation between the academic community and the political world. I will now turn things over to Dan Glickman, who is the director of our Institute of Politics and a very successful director, formerly a member of the United States House of Representatives and Secretary of Agriculture. Please join me in welcoming Dan Glickman.
Thank you very much. I would first like to pay a special tribute to Dean Nye. Some of you know that Dean Nye announced that at the end of this school year he will be going back to full-time teaching. Without his leadership and support, this would have never happened here, and I think we owe him a hand for his work and help. Well, I want to thank everybody here for coming. Senator Kennedy and Caroline, President Summers, there are other members of the Kennedy family are here. What a great day this is. I want you to know this. It's a spectacular day here. And I was going to say something, I thought that Joe was going to introduce me in the following way. You ever notice sometimes when people introduce you, they say, "It gives me great pleasure," and then they introduce you. Well, Joe didn't do that. I don't know whether it screwed it up for me. But anyway, there's a story, supposedly a true story, about Winston Churchill. And Winston Churchill was a member of a club of very brilliant people. It was called the Other Club, and they used to meet in London. And they'd meet once a month, and they'd give a person an extemporaneous topic to speak about. And one day it was Winston's turn. And remembering the way I thought that Joe was going to introduce me, Winston got his topic. He got it before dinner, and he looked at his topic, and there was one word written on it, and the word was sex. Winston thought about it during dinner, stood up, and to give his speech, he said the following 4 words: "It gives me great pleasure." And then he sat down. Well, I would have to say to you that it gives me great pleasure to be here. It gives the IOP staff great pleasure to be here. Kathy McLaughlin and the whole crew at the IOP who has done such a tremendous job here at getting this thing done. And I can't help but think about President Kennedy's statement about passing the torch to the new generation. I think the renaming of this forum and the work that's been done here is really a symbol of the constant renewal of the forum and the Institute of Politics and the Kennedy School in terms of the new generation of leadership that's always being reborn here. I want to thank members of the Institute's board for being here. Our chairman, because of the hurricane and other problems in Washington, which are much more severe than I had really thought, Senator John Culver is not here. He's been a great chairman of the Senior Advisory Board. I think Milt Gewurtzman is here, if I'm not mistaken. Heather Campion, Heather and Chuck Campion. Heather is, you talk about somebody who has been a catalyst for this thing from the very beginning. It's been Heather Campion, and I couldn't have done this, and nobody could have done this without her. And one of our, let's give her a hand as well, all right? We also have one of our former directors of the Institute of Politics, a member of Congress who served with Senator Kennedy and myself, and that's Phil Sharp. He is here as well. We're delighted to have him. We have I think there are 4 former directors of the Institute of Politics who are here. One who's been recognized many times already today, but will continue to be recognized, is Richard Neustadt. Here. He's the greatest politician I've ever met in my life. And Cambridge Mayor Michael Sullivan. Is Mayor Sullivan here? Okay, well, Mayor Menino fills the bill for all the mayors in the country. I also want to welcome back to the IOP many of our former fellows and members of the Student Advisory Committee who are here. I wonder if you all could stand up. Any former members of the Student Advisory Committee? More than 5 years ago, John Kennedy Jr. started the discussions here about renovating and modernizing the Forum. And it was his idea to take this forum into the 21st century and make it so it was suitable to speak to the world. And that's what we have done. And we have fulfilled his vision, significantly enhancing our technological capabilities. So today we have 3 friends of the Kennedy School and the Institute of Politics who could not be here in person tonight, and we are still able to join our celebration. And we're going to do this by teleconferencing, and we hope it works. Our first, otherwise Mayor Menino may have to fill in for all 3 of them. Our first speaker is Christiane Amanpour, is CNN's chief international correspondent. She is joining us from London. Christiane, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right.
Hello to you all. Hello, especially.
Can you hear me?
Senator Kennedy, members of the family.
Okay.
I can hear you fine.
Thank you. Well, you look terrific. I want you to know that. Yes, yes. I know, Christiane, that you joined us at the forum last year. I know that you are very close to Caroline and other members of the family, and I thought you might have a couple of comments for us today.
Absolutely. Well, I'm absolutely thrilled and honored to be part of this dedication to John. It's really very touching and very worthy, and I know he would be proud. I did come last year to talk at this forum, and it was a great experience, not just because of the technology, the time it was broadcast, but also because of the students and the great questions I got and the deep knowledge and interest I found the students there in international affairs. I think that you know, even before John took on a senior advisory position at your institute, 20 years ago, he brought me for a visit to the Kennedy Library, and we were both at college at Rhode Island at that time, and we were shown around by Dave Powers, the president's assistant and close friend, and I came away with so much history and so much inspiration to public service. And really, John did that for me. He introduced me to everything that you all stand for. And I've gone on, hopefully, to implement everything I learned from him and from the family and from the Kennedy legacy. And so I'm thrilled to be here. And I know that John, who was so interested for so long in making politics accessible to so many people, would be so proud of this event and of the upgrade in your technology and of the ability to use this technology to spread the word, if you like, amongst the people he was trying to reach.
Well, thank you, Christiane. We're most grateful that you could be here, and I guarantee you that everybody in this room is a fan of Christiane Amanpour, and we're most grateful to you. Well, our next person from away from Cambridge and actually outside the United States, there she is Marie-Christine Reichert. She is an alumni of the Kennedy School, and she joined us from Durban, South Africa. Well, is Marie-Christine there? But I saw her for a minute. Christiane, you're looking good, but there you are. Okay. Marie-Christine, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you hear me?
We can hear you fine, and I understand that our forum inspired the design of the Africa Center there, and I wonder if you might be able to tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing.
Well, I'm a management consultant at the Africa Center for Health and Population Studies in South Africa, in Zululand, and we have a research center there. And so when I arrived in South Africa, they still had to build the building where the research will take place. What is unique about the Africa Center is that the researcher, the researchers, they actually live and do the work where the community is, so it's a community-based research. And when I was a student at the Kennedy School, I was very inspired by the forum, not because, of course, of all the things that took place in the forum, the events and all that, but more, I wondered what made this place so special, because everything seemed to be going on there. It was, as Dina said, the heart of the Kennedy School and the soul of the Kennedy School. And I spent a lot of time analyzing why that happened. And when we built the center at Somkele, Matuba, we talked a lot to the architects about the Kennedy School, and we have a forum now there as well, and with very much representative of the culture of the Africa Center, and just like the forum represents the culture at the Kennedy School. Like anyone who wants to know what's going on in the Kennedy School, you don't need words, you just come and look at the forum and see what's going on, and words cannot explain. And the same happens now in the Africa Center, so definitely the forum inspired very much the design. And funny enough, as a coincidence, we had an award, an architectural award. The building got an award, and I'm now in Durban, where the award was given only an hour ago to the architect, Steve Kinsler, who actually came to the Kennedy School to look at the forum. So you all have to come and have a look.
Well, listen,
and thank you so much for being a guest.
Well, we appreciate it, and we thank you so much for the great work that you're doing there. And let's give her a hand for a wonderful... Thank you very much. And now for our final speaker, we tried to get somebody who had a sense of humor, and we couldn't find him. So we have actually the sage, the sage of the American political system. Anyway, Alan Simpson had a distinguished career in the United States Senate. Oh heck! Here's Alan Simpson. Al, you want to talk to us a little bit?
Hello, Stan. Yes, of course I do. I can never stop. I see Ted sitting there. I can see him laughing, and I just want to know what he's up to. Let me say, Dan, and can you hear me?
Yes.
Notice the technology here, the clarity of this from Cody, Wyoming. You do see that, don't you?
We do.
Larry and Joe and Dan and Kathy and old Pryor. I tell you, he's a good one. Ted and Caroline, they're dear people. And I met John in Wyoming in 1978 when I was running for the U.S. Senate. He was at a ranch in Wyoming. What a wonderful young man, and he was an inspiration to me and to Ann and to the world. I was privileged to really have and share his friendship. So that's who we commemorate today. But I see Ted sitting there, and he would not want me not to tell this story. He always loved it. He'll just chuckle his little head off. And it's that wonderful Wyoming story. It's that wonderful Wyoming story where this couple hit the sack. The phone rings at 3 in the morning. The guy answers, says, "How the hell do I know? That's 2,000 miles from here." Hangs up, and his wife said, "Who was it?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "Some nut called and asked if the coast was clear." You'll have to think about it. No, we don't want to dabble on that. It is a wonderful thing, the teleconferencing, and a miracle indeed. And something we always look forward to having, and now you've done it. So it's a great honor for me. It was a tremendous honor for Ann and I to share 3.5 years at the Kennedy School of Government and to do what you do, Dan and Dave Pryor, to be the director of the IOP. And we cherish it. And you're there to carry it on, and you have a forum to make it ever better. I always told those young people, and I see some of them there, some back in the faces of those who were there, that you can't hate politicians and love democracy. Time to drop that little canard. And then I tell them what politics really was. Very simple. In politics, there are no right answers, only a continuing flow of compromises among groups, resulting in a changing, cloudy, and ambiguous series of public decisions where appetite and ambition compete openly with knowledge and wisdom. That's all it is. And it was a great honor. A great honor to be there, and love to everybody and all of you. You gave us 3.5 years of a wonderful splice of our life.
Thank you, Alan. Really great. That guy is too serious for me. I don't know how we're going to deal with him. Well, any event, showing you a little bit about some of the new technology here on the new screens, we thought you would like to see that. And as we move into the forum's new era with a new name, we want to kind of bring you back to the history of the place, which is really remarkable, and taking a look back at how it all started. And we're going to show a video of that right now.
I urge all of you today, especially those who are students, to act, to enter the list of public service.
President Kennedy challenged a generation to serve their country. He believed, and he brought his country to believe, that politics was a noble profession and that the government had a vital role to play in making the country a better place.
The educated citizen has an obligation to serve the public. He may be a precinct worker or president. He may give his talents at the courthouse, the state house, the White House. He may be a civil servant or a senator, a candidate or a campaign worker, a winner or a loser. But he must be a participant and not a spectator.
And a generation asked to serve answered the call.
And his whole ideal of public service, of government and politics. He brought young men and women into Washington as FDR had done 20 years before.
Prominent Harvard faculty were recruited by President Kennedy as well.
And I said yes. As a historian, I would obviously be a great opportunity to see history being made at first hand. But I'm not absolutely clear what I would be doing as a special assistant. To which he replied, I'm not absolutely clear what I will be doing as president, but I'm sure there's enough to keep us both busy.
In 1963, President Kennedy visited Cambridge to select a site for his presidential library.
Jack Kennedy cared about Harvard. In every aspect of life, he wanted the best, and he knew Harvard was the best, and he could get the best possible education there and pursue his interests in history and literature and political science in particular.
After President Kennedy's death, meetings were held to discuss a presidential library. The theme of a living memorial emerged.
I think the idea of living memorial was inspired by the belief that at some time as an undergraduate at Harvard, there was an experience that the president had which furthered his interest in politics and in government and public service.
Merely establishing a library and museum in Franklin Roosevelt's tradition would not be sufficient.
There was no model for an institute of politics, a place that would try to excite people about elective politics and understand everything about elective politics.
In 1966, the Institute of Politics was established at Harvard as a living memorial to President Kennedy.
Initially, this was not very well received by most of Harvard. Most people said if we needed an Institute of Politics, we would already have one. Harvard's been successful for more than 300 years, so, what do we need something that we don't have for? Besides politics, what does that have to do on campus? It's a little dangerous.
In its first year, exciting students about politics seemed to be the least of the IOP's problems. Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara discovered this when he visited Harvard to speak shortly after Vietnam draft notices went out.
I asked the dean of Harvard College whether I should expect trouble. And the dean, with a complacency that really tells much about the old Harvard, said, "No, there'll be no trouble. Harvard men do not riot." Well, he was wrong.
Indeed, he was. A riot ensued when angry students surrounded McNamara's car.
So he got out of the car, climbed on top of the roof, and engaged in an exchange with the students. He got off somehow, I've forgotten just how, and was spirited away through the steam tunnels. And his guide was my assistant, Barney Frank.
In order to get students and politicians talking in a somewhat more civil fashion, the IOP needed a home.
When we got into the little yellow house, which was in the spring of '67, it proved to be the best strategic decision I ever made, was to grab that house and wait a year for it, because it was an ideal location for undergraduates. It was right smack in the middle of their undergraduate houses.
Quickly, students found the IOP an inspiring place to be.
In the early 70s, you couldn't help but be political. Everybody was political. You'd get tear gassed on the way to class. It was a crazy time at Harvard. The Vietnam protests were in full swing. Kent State.
With the political climate at Harvard energized more than ever, the need for a professional school of government and a large venue for public discourse was clear.
We wanted to deal with current political problems and current policy problems and shed light on them and excite people about them. Well, we discovered we had a great big bushy tail,
but there was no dog. So it was my job to try to create the dog, or at least to create a vision of the dog and then begin building the dog.
As the IOP finished its 11th year, the Kennedy School of Government was finally completed, and the IOP moved from its little yellow house to a new home at 79 JFK Street.
My name is Byron McLean, and as an undergraduate at the Harvard College, I had the opportunity to attend quite a few forum events. One of the things that I appreciated about the forum was its nonpartisan atmosphere, or better yet, its bipartisan atmosphere. I remember when I first came to Harvard, I thought that Democrats were right on most of the issues. But then I came down here to the forum, and I had the opportunity to hear President George Bush speak, Ward Connerly speak on affirmative action, Karl Rove, and a plethora of other conservatives. And by the end of my 4th year here at Harvard, I no longer thought that Democrats were right on most of the issues. I knew that we were. In addition, here at the forum, it created an educational atmosphere that Harvard students could get at no other place. Yes, in our classrooms, we can learn about policy and we can read about politics, but here at the forum, it put those writings into action. We got an opportunity to interact with policymakers, with politicians, and to learn from them. But even most importantly was the fact that we got an opportunity to actively participate with them. At the end of every forum, there's a question and answer period where undergraduates can walk up to the microphone. And on many occasions, myself and many others would ramble on over to the microphone, trying to remember the question that we wanted to ask. And oftentimes, instead of presenting a question, we would state our own opinion. But it was these experiences, being in this environment where there was a bipartisan atmosphere, being here where academic excellence flourished, and having that opportunity to participate in politics with these policymakers. It's these experiences that we as undergraduates take with us and will cherish with us forever. But don't just take my word for it. In this next clip, you will hear from a few undergrads about their experiences here at the college and why they appreciate the forum just as much as I do. Thank you.
I've often been asked, how do you see the Kennedy School? And I've always had the same answer. The day passes, night comes, Harvard closes down, and the Kennedy School comes alive.
The one thing Heather Campion would say to us, guys, what are you going to remember 10 years from now? This forum or the paper that you wrote for tomorrow? I don't remember a single paper that I wrote in college, but I remember the forums, like yesterday.
We go to class every day. Sometimes we leave class, we're exhausted, and there's this debate. Do I go home and go and watch TV and relax, or do I go to the forum? Every time you make the wrong decision to go back home, you miss a great forum event.
While very popular today, the forum almost didn't make it off the drawing board.
The planning office at Harvard, which was trying to have oversight of the building, thought this was the worst idea they had ever heard. They said this was going to become called Ira's Mausoleum, was what this guy called it, because they said, what are you going to do with such space? It's just going to be empty space. Nothing's going to happen there.
For 25 years, the forum has been Harvard's premier venue for political discussion and debate.
I've had an awful lot of students come to me and tell me that their academic work at the Kennedy School is great and important, and their academic work at Harvard is important. But it's the forum itself and the opportunities that it presents were really the icing on the cake of either why they came to the Kennedy School or why they thought their Harvard experience was so terrific.
Because we have at the Kennedy School an Institute of Politics, there are dozens of undergraduates who feel impelled to, in their own way, try to follow in John F. Kennedy's footsteps.
The forum has hosted thousands of speakers, from heads of state to state representatives, members of the U.S. House to candidates for the White House, scientists and scholars, artists and Army generals, businessmen and environmentalists.
We believe is that the forum is an important part of training public leaders, because if you want to see a leader or be a leader, it helps to have some experience seeing one.
I believe, as an Israeli, that there is a need to solve the Palestinian problem.
And we are ready to sacrifice, and it's worth to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of this peace.
В связи с этим в эти дни я, по сути дела, открытым текстом доводил мысль, что сейчас, не осенью этого года, а сейчас, Россия нуждается в поддержке.
But it just goes to show you live long enough and you exhale, you can breathe in new thoughts. And this is a wonderful nation, a great country, wonderful political parties, and for many of you to get involved in. And I would hope that after you have finished up your 4 years or your 2 years here, that you get involved. And while you're still studying, you get involved and make those phone calls and help to register voters and help to open up the political process to more people.
Because this is the most extraordinary moment. The friendships that were born out of this, the challenges that are thrown in your way, the highs and the lows, there's no way to describe what is possible and available to you. And that's what it really boils down to. You have a chance to act on your desire to be involved in politics.
In addition to the speakers, the highlight of every forum occurs when students ask questions.
There are a lot of bright-eyed people out there with their eyes popped and their neck muscles pumping, saying, when that guy finishes or this gal finishes, I got a question that's going to curl her shorts.
It wasn't that you just listened to someone speak. I mean, people had questions written out way, way before the speaker came.
If we were to give you evidence showing that Saddam Hussein was planning weapons of mass destruction to hurt America, would you accept this evidence as the truth? And more importantly, would you then support an American attack on Iraq to stop that attack on us?
The issue of Iraq otherwise is concerned. Pakistan has its hands full with so many problems on our eastern border, on our western border, domestically, our internal sectarian extremism. We don't want to get involved in any other troubles or issues around the world.
I don't know if you remember the incident, February 14th, 1968, the China incident. Do you remember that?
No,
It was a pilot that was shot down over Hainan Island. His beeper was heard when he was first shot down, and then 6.5 hours later was heard for 20 to 70 minutes. And you people sat there in that room for 45 minutes, never addressing his name. He was always the China incident. He was 25 years old. I don't know that he had a 25-year-old wife and a baby, a 1-year-old baby. I'm that guy's wife. And you said on page 6, no rescue attempt should be made. Don't go after him. It's not worth it. And all these years, Mr. McNamara, I wanted someone from those 10 people that were at that meeting to say to me, I am sorry. And I'd like you to say that in front of all these people to me, I am sorry. Please. I just want you to say, I am sorry.
I have no recollection of the meeting, and I can't believe I understand what you have, but I haven't seen it, and I'd like to see it. But let me just say this. If I said it, I'm not sorry, I'm horrified.
Well, I'd like you to say to me, I'm sorry, Maureen.
Well, I'll say I'm sorry, but that's not enough. I am absolutely horrified.
Question and answer time comes, and watch them either squirm or handle themselves with great skill, and let them see how a political or national figure has gotten this far in life. And then they're going to see things like candor and openness, because nobody gets very far in life with deception.
My favorite forum is when Ken Starr came. And that's not because of what he said, but because of the question I asked him. And so I got after him a little bit, and he got right back in my face. But it's that sort of interaction with America's most prominent public figures that really makes the forum a unique place.
Thank you very much, Senator. Thanks to all of you.
Kennedy himself was always learning, always curious about politics and about history. And when he met de Gaulle, for example, he talked with de Gaulle about de Gaulle's recollections of Churchill. The forum gives young people today an opportunity to be young Jack Kennedys out there talking to those great leaders.
A major part of the success of the forum has been the ability to attract speakers from both sides of the aisle, along with the Institute's policy of requiring them to take unfiltered questions from the audience.
Jerry Ford said, I would love to do it. He was tremendous. And of course, then they asked him about the Nixon pardon. Fair game. I mean, why did you do it? Didn't you feel that was the wrong thing to do? He was a crook. Well, he said, let's go back and look at who he was. George Bush. George said, come to Harvard. He said, they'll have me strung up in the trees in effigy. I said, no, they won't.
While we wish you a very happy 50th reunion at Yale, you'll always be welcome back at the Kennedy School.
I like the forum because it helps me to put myself in others' shoes, especially leaders, because this is what I'm aspiring to.
Through the Students' Initiative, Cesar Chavez came to speak.
The best thing I remember was not that we packed the forum and we filled so many seats with young people who were interested and excited about the fact that they were seeing this sort of icon, but the fact that there were 2 students who walked out that day and started a cause, a group that is now one of the largest groups supporting migrant farm workers in California today.
The forum also affords students the chance to learn from leaders who make history, and the impact on Harvard and the Kennedy School is profound.
I think that the event with Robert McNamara and Ted Sorensen about the Cuban Missile Crisis was an extremely compelling historical event for people, for young people.
I know that I cut classes to go to forum events, and I think that actually I learned so many more things from going to forum events than I did going to classes, and I don't know if this should be endorsed.
It's a place where the energy and the passion of the students of the Kennedy School really comes alive.
Because the temptation is to think, oh, politics, I don't do that, I just do government. And you can think about that as Forstall said, that's like saying, you know, I do procreation, but I don't do sex.
In fact, we sometimes say that the forum, or attending the forums, is the 6th course that our students take, and that they may get as much out of that 6th course as if they took another course from the faculty in its place.
Every time a student hears a speaker or meets a political figure here at the Kennedy School, particularly in the forum, there's an opportunity to motivate that student and change their life.
And that's what the forum does every night that there's an event at Harvard.
Thank you. My name is Sophia Lai. I'm a junior at college. And I want to thank you for the speech.
My name is Heather Campion, and I'm honored today to tell you about the man for whom this forum is being dedicated today. John Kennedy loved this forum. He loved the give and take, he loved the spontaneity, and especially the irreverence of it, and he loved it most when conventional wisdom was being challenged here. He came to the Institute of Politics taking his mother's place on the Senior Advisory Committee. Early on, he explained to me that his sister Caroline was devoting her energy to the Kennedy Library, and that he'd like to do the same for the IOP. As the new director of the forum, it was, of course, an offer I couldn't refuse. But I had no idea, when I took him up on it, just how perfect he was for this forum and this institute. Of the hundreds of speakers we've had, heads of state, presidential candidates, celebrities of every calling, few could capture an audience the way John Kennedy could. He was never nervous, would never follow any script we'd give him, and delighted in his own exchanges with the audience. When John was on this stage, he had the audience in the palm of his hand. It was his special gift. John had a unique spirit that he brought to everything he did here. His arrivals on campus were always entertaining, particularly for IOP board meetings. He'd insist on getting here by himself, no escorts. He'd usually take a cab, so we were never quite sure when he was arriving. Sometimes he'd walk in impeccably dressed, and sometimes he'd look as if he had slept in his clothes. Once he showed up with a movie star, and then there was the time he brought his dog. The story of John and his dog has become somewhat legendary here, but for those of you who don't know it, let me share it with you now. Samson was an untamed German Shepherd that John had gotten from a pound in New York City. John arrived with Samson one day as our board meeting was beginning and made the mistake of trying to take him up our spiral staircase. Halfway up the stairs, Samson panicked. With the dog yelping and heads turning in the board meeting, John picked up his 90-pound dog and carried him off to a young staffer, whom Samson promptly bit. John was unpredictable, and yet we could always count on him. The IOP and the Kennedy School were the beneficiaries of his energy, his talent, and his passion for making his own mark in this world. Here are just a few of the things that he did here in addition to forum events. When the IOP Director's Internship Program was created, he was the first to hire our student interns. He had them at George Magazine, and a few of them are here today. He chaired 2 search committees for IOP directors, and he got us started, as Dan said, on the idea of renovating this forum. Many of the new technology features you see here today are thanks to his vision. John tested and developed many ideas here. At Harvard, we all took pride in the development of his magazine. As editor of George, he would often call for suggestions about interesting people and ideas that were coming through. If you take an IOP forum calendar and read through George Magazine during those years, you'll see a striking connection. But he challenged us, too, to make politics a little more hip and a lot more fun. He got us thinking differently about politics and government. And so, it is fitting and meaningful that the forum is being named for this John Kennedy, who brought so much life to this arena and inspired us all.
So would you please welcome John Kennedy.
Thank you, Charlie. I know it comes as a surprise to all of you that the Institute has a decidedly Kennedy bent to it, but...
With his vision and great style, John worked with the advisory committee and had a particular interest in the forum.
He would focus very much on an issue from President Kennedy's administration that he thought had relevance today. One of his favorite ones was one he actually worked with his mother on regarding the arts and the impact of the arts in the public arena.
Some would say that government funds for PBS may mean less funds for children health care. Is that an appropriate use of public money? And as the public frustration with conventional politics mounts, many people look to the arts as a means to enforce a political agenda.
He moderated numerous events there. He had all kinds of exciting new ideas for its use. He saw it as a vehicle to expand the reach of the Institute of Politics and its programs to the rest of the country, beyond Harvard.
John brought his good friend, Stone founder Jan Wenner, to the forum.
He's a friend of my mother's, and I met him when I was a teenager, and he had a sort of a anarchist gleam in his eye, which distinguished him from a lot of other people that my mother introduced me to. So I was...
Through his work at the Institute, his interests in politics evolved.
The forum and the Institute of Politics were about exciting people and attracting them to elective politics and all that entails, including the circus and the pathos and the glory, the whole shebang.
As John described the philosophy of Rolling Stone in a forum on rock, media, and politics, the emerging themes of George magazine were evident.
It is, while it was covering music, it was also covering politics, and made people realize that if you're going to be interested in music and entertainment and culture, then you have to be interested in politics.
I thought it was enormously courageous to start a magazine. You know, very few of them really make it, and he put a lot into it, and it did make it. He understood, as a part of a generation, the impact that culture has on these issues, and that wasn't something we were kind of thinking about in the development of the Institute. We were thinking in the more traditional ways of political parties and leadership.
I think he tested a lot of the ideas for the magazine here. He came to Winthrop House, met with undergraduates, a few hundred of them packed into the Winthrop House dining room, and laid out his not uncontroversial notion of having a magazine that was fun, focused on entertainment and politics.
At a forum, John explained George magazine's strategy of mixing entertainment and politics, and he loved the exchange.
You know, women buy 8% of political magazines, but 80% of regular magazines. And the question is, if in an election year you're going to try to get a new audience of people interested in politics, then you're going to have to use some tried and true methods that other magazines, that other forms of media have used successfully. And as far as we're concerned, anything that you can do to really get people interested in politics, then that's half the battle.
He had a sense for the fact that in democratic politics, especially in periods of TV, that there's an element of theater or public relations. And I think he actually had a more positive gloss with respect to that, recognizing that, you know, it's life, get used to it and get on with it.
Through George magazine, John carried ideas from academia to a broader audience.
I had a project in the school called Visions of Governance for the 21st Century, which was asking why has there been a decline in confidence in government. And he said, why don't you write an article for George magazine on that? He said, let's get this view out to a broader audience.
He was determined to make politics compelling for everyone and sought to inspire his generation to be more engaged in public life.
The forum will continue to play the key role that it does in education. And I think John Kennedy Jr. is a suitable name to have on the forum because he was a man who was interested in public issues, in developing public leadership, and in trying to broaden people's horizons.
And it's going to say right back up there, John F. Kennedy Jr., and 40 years from now, they'll say, who was that? Well, he wasn't just the editor of George magazine, carried a tremendous burden of the heir to Camelot and did it with class and grace. He was a strong young man, great fiber, great wit, and great warmth and wisdom.
For all of us, remember, we were on the advisory board, that he was enormously attentive, more often than not late for meetings, but always there. And he was very, very much engaged and very much involved and cared very deeply about the forum. And that is, you know, why I think for the members of the family, we're so honored that it's will bear his name, because it sort of ties him in with the Institute of Politics and also to the institute that bears his father's name.
I want to acknowledge Greg Wilson of our staff who put all of these videos together. Greg, are you here? I think you did a splendid job. And I also want to acknowledge Doris Kearns-Goodwin. Doris, are you here somewhere? Doris, as many of you know, is a distinguished historian in her own right, has served on a senior advisory committee, and if you listen carefully to the first video, she narrated that for us, and we're most appreciative. And then I finally need to acknowledge we have two former members of Congress who are here. One is I see my own colleague on, not so old, but older colleague on the House Judiciary Committee, Bob Drinan, who is over there. And I think I saw Ron Mazzoli. Ron, are you here? Ron Mazzoli. Oh, Peter Torkelson. I'm sorry, Peter. We have to bipartisan too, right here from Mass. Are there any other members of Congress that I have forgotten to mention? Okay. I now have the great privilege of introducing the distinguished president of this university, Larry Summers, who I was privileged to work with him and served with him in President Clinton's cabinet, who I believe had unequaled knowledge and leadership and professionalism in managing this great economy, and in doing so in a way that was spectacular in terms of job creation and in terms of economic growth. He is the 27th president of Harvard University. He has been an enormous supporter of the Institute of Politics, and more important is that the students of this great university are an enormous supporter of him, which I think speaks to its great attributes. I introduce to you President Larry Summers.
Thank you very much, Dan. It's interesting to note that you didn't say that it was a pleasure to welcome. Actually, as you were giving me credit for all the economic good times, I was reminded of an experience that I had in Washington when I had occasion to introduce President Clinton, and I extolled his virtues in the financial sphere, and he said, "Larry, you have just demonstrated one of my important laws of political life. Whenever possible, be introduced by someone who works within an organization that you lead." Thank you very much. Actually, Dan, I want to seriously thank Dan for his extraordinary leadership at the Institute of Politics. Thank all of those who have led the Institute of Politics since its inception and brought it to this point. Thank Joe Nye, not just for his leadership of the Institute of Politics, but for the remarkable transformations and strengthening he has wrought in the Kennedy School over the years of his deanship. Joe, thank you for a job well done. Professors and economists like me don't know much about politics, but I know enough to recognize the crucial elected officials, and I know enough to recognize that all politics are local. Mayor Sullivan, Mayor Menino, it's wonderful to have you here. And of course, I want to acknowledge the many members of the Kennedy family who are present here as well. You know, watching those 3 videos and all of that, and remembering the spirit of bipartisanship that characterizes the Institute of Politics, I thought I should say something good about classes. I thought I should offer the observation that occasionally something is learned. That it is not just in the forum that education takes place at Harvard University. But then I remembered that there's another law of politics, which is that one should know one's audience, and so I decided I wouldn't put too much stress on that particular observation. You know, this is a remarkable group of people who are collected here. Remarkable in some cases for their past accomplishment, remarkable in some cases for their ongoing accomplishment, and remarkable in many cases also for the accomplishments that are yet to come. I know that I was inspired through my life by the Kennedy family. And I know that the experiences that I had in this place had a great deal to do with shaping my interest and commitment to public service. And I am not in doubt that what is true of me is true of many in this room. We owe an enormous debt to President Kennedy, to the Kennedy family, and we who have been fortunate to be associated with Harvard over the last quarter century owe an enormous debt to the Institute of Politics and to this forum. President Kennedy, in the speech he was scheduled to give at lunch in Dallas, said something that really captures what this forum is all about, and indeed, I believe, what our university is all about. He said, "Leadership and learning are indispensable to each other." That has always been true. And with the challenges that this world faces today, it has never been more true. I believe that this forum, in its new conception, will help to unite leadership and learning, will help to teach not just those who will be in this place, but those who, thanks to John's vision, will see what is happening here around the world. And I believe that our university will be better able to do its part in training the leaders of the next generation because of what we celebrate today. The Kennedy School bears the name of a John F. Kennedy whose graceful leadership inspired a generation of young adults to become involved in public service. From this day forward, the Forum at the Institute of Politics will bear the name of another John F. Kennedy, who used his many gifts to enable another generation to become informed and engaged in political discourse. It is appropriate, and all of us are very grateful. Now I have the privilege of introducing someone who the old cliche about needing no introduction is surely true of. Senator Kennedy is a friend of Massachusetts. He is a friend of education. And most importantly, he is a friend of Harvard University. Senator Kennedy has done as much as any senator in this century to make our country a different and better place. You know, Hurricane Isabel stopped some from getting from Washington to Boston. Hurricane Kennedy has been transforming the life of our nation through his work in the United States Senate for some 42 years now. Whether it is mental health parity or health insurance portability, whether it is medical care or equal opportunity, Senator Kennedy has always been there. Senator Kennedy's views are an inspiration to many of us. Even those benighted souls who do not share Senator Kennedy's views are inspired by the example of the way in which he works, in a principled way, but in a practical way, in a strong and clear way, but in a cooperative and bipartisan way, not for visibility or fame, but for the benefit of all the citizens of our country and this world. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Larry Summers. It's nice to be with a president that I can agree with as much as with Larry. Let me say on behalf of all the family, very seriously though, we're enormously grateful for your interest in the Institute. I think all of the members of our family know the many times that you've taken the time to ask us and to meet with us and talk with us about the Institute, and made us feel that this was a vital part of the university, and also about how it can be more important in terms of the future. You've taken a great personal interest, and all of us are enormously grateful for this. We thank you so much for what you have done for President Kennedy's Institute of Politics, and what you've done to make today so special for all the members of our family. I want to thank Joe Nye, who has been the leader of the School of Government and one of the great thoughtful writers and thinkers of public policy, and continues to take great interest. Now we'll go on to different challenges, but we all know it will be in the areas of public policy. We've all been enriched by not only his the lectures that he gives, but also by his writings, and they're must-reading for all of us in the Congress. And we thank Joe so much for all of your support, and at the critical times about this forum, for helping make the right decisions. Joe, we thank you so much for all that you've done for the Institute. We thank Dan Glickman for, he's wonderful, isn't he? We could listen to him for a long time. He's had a very full day today, and some of you know the pressures that he was to go back and run for the United States Senate. He hasn't given us the clear answer yet about what he's going to do, but this is a man of action, a man of principle, a man of ideas. He loves this institute, and we love him, Dan. And we thank your wonderful partner so much for all that she has done. I also want to thank Graham Allison for his wonderful comments that he had on bringing back so many memories, but also for all he did, for reminding us of the early days of the Institute of Policy. It was enormously important. Dick Neustadt, we see here, so many looking around this room, were all part of those days. I thank Tom Menino, who's been a wonderful friend of mine. We've been together frequently in a lot of different events, and he said, I want to be there on Friday evening at that dedication. And Tom, I want to thank you for your friendship. It's good to see Mayor Sullivan as well here. I thank them. And I want to also recognize Dave Pryor. He's really one of our important members of the United States Senate over a very long period of time, had a wonderful record there, and he and his wife did such a great job here. Now succeeded in the United States Senate by a wonderful son who's doing a great job. The idea that one family member gets ahead on the basis of another family always bothers me a little bit, but with the exception of the Pryors, here we go. Ron Mazzoli, can't believe we worked years ago on immigration, and he's back here again studying, and was a wonderful figure here as a fellow. Led a group. When I heard he was talking about the immigration, we wondered how many would show up, and they kept showing up, and there's a great tribute to Ron. And Bob Drinan, we saw him. We thank him so much. The School of Government, and that very special part of it called the Institute of Politics, is the memorial that would have meant the most to my brother. From the beginning, a generation ago, the IOP had a powerful hold on our family, and especially as it gradually came to be the place where Jack's son John found he could almost hear his father's voice calling us to serve our country. It is here at the IOP that young men and women have the rare opportunity to be at a place where the academic world and the world of public service meet. They can learn from those who have actually served in public office and who can impact firsthand knowledge and counsel about the fulfillments and at times the frustrations of that enormous responsibility. New ideas can be explored, and the search for better solutions to festering current challenges can be inspiring and even sometimes productive. And it was this stimulating atmosphere of political excitement, commitment to worthwhile causes that first attracted John to the IOP. And he often told me how much he looked forward to the meetings of the Senior Advisory Committee and to absorbing, even only briefly, some of the dedication and excellence he always found here. And he truly enjoyed the chance to make a hands-on contributions to the impressive efforts he saw being made here by the students he found to be so remarkable, and the faculty so skillful in teaching them, inspiring them, and guiding them. He liked nothing better than meeting with the students and faculty for informal talks while he was here, and it was a treasured opportunity to get to know as many of you as he could. John loved to ask you questions. He had an inquiring mind and a lively intellectual curiosity about all he was seeing and all that was going on around him. Like his father before him, it was sheer bliss to lean back in his chair, lock his fingers together behind his head, and be part of a spirited discussion of any of the issues of the day. John wanted everyone, but especially the young, to be more aware and more involved. It was why he founded George, to reach out and bring new young voices into the public square. He hoped George would enlighten as well as entertain. And he loved the letters from the readers who said that they wanted to be informed and might even decide to vote. It was exactly what he was trying to achieve. And that's why John loved this forum and the opportunity it provides to hear the words of people they read about and ask questions about their views. He enjoyed the times he was a panelist and even the moderator, and he reveled in the give and take and anything thought-provoking. As he once said, the most important challenge is what this institute and these forums do very well, which is to get people involved in debating the issues and making democracy work. That was John's mission, to make democracy work better. And it's fitting that this special place where he felt that vital effort was being made so well will now be named in his honor. He would no doubt be embarrassed by all the attention, but he would be pleased as well. And now their names will be linked forever, son and father, forum and school. So to see their names side by side is to think of all they meant to us, and how they inspired us, and how very much we love them both. So I'd like to thank all of those at Harvard who have made this beautiful remembrance possible through this honor to John. It is deeply touching to me and all the members of the family, and Jack and Jackie would be proud as well. John was one of Jackie's two miracles, and it's a special privilege now to introduce the other miracle. We cherish and love her so much, John's beloved sister, Caroline. You got to be on that fishing or do something.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, Teddy. Please stop. As all of you know and can see, it means so much that you have all come here today. And I'm especially pleased, and I know John would be, that the members of the Senior Advisory Committee who served with him are here, and even more that many of his colleagues from George have made the effort to come. As always, my thanks and love to the members of our family who are here and those who are stuck in airports all over the East Coast. They are always here for me and always have been for me and John. This new forum will allow, as we saw, the exchange of voices and opinions from around the world. It celebrates the exchange of ideas and a commitment to public service, both of which were so important to John. There is nothing he liked more than discussing and arguing over the issues of the day, and for all these reasons, this forum is really a wonderful tribute to him. More than anyone that I've ever known, John had a way of looking at the world that was all his own, and he was not afraid to go his own way. When he was trying to decide where to go to college, I remember him asking my grandmother for advice, and she said, "Wherever you go in the world, everyone always knows a Harvard man, but who has ever heard of a Brown man?" That was all John needed to hear, and off he went to Brown. There he spent some of the most stimulating, in all senses of the word, years of his life, and met people who really helped him become himself, some of whom are here today. John would also get a giant kick out of this event, and I know the joke would be at my expense somehow. You went to Harvard, and now they're naming half a building after me. And underlying his incredible sense of humor was a seriousness of purpose. John took the mission of the IOP very seriously. He knew how much effort had been put into it by my mother, my Uncle Bobby, and for so many years by Teddy. He saw the IOP and its students as a vehicle to bring my father's legacy forward to a new generation, and he worked hard to make the IOP a dynamic and forward-looking enterprise. John was an astute observer of politics and a strong believer that participation in the political process is absolutely critical to our democracy. He understood before a lot of people did that politics was no longer an every 2-year or 4-year story, but an all-day, everyday drama. And he realized how the worlds of entertainment and politics were converging. Thank you, Arnold. And set out to chronicle these developments in George. He attracted a new group of journalists and editors to the enterprise and reached an audience that had previously been disaffected from the political scene. John brought his questioning intelligence and sense of humor to the magazine and to the IOP as well. I'm proud to take his place on the Senior Advisory Committee and hope that I can have as great an impact. Thank you.
I want you to stay up here because we're going to ask. Could we ask President Summers, Dean Nye, and Caroline and Ted to. I think you ought to stand over there. What did they just pull it up? Did we just pull it down, or? We're going to figure that out. Okay, all right. Why don't Caroline lift it up? Good. I would just read what it says. It says, dedicated to John F. Kennedy, Jr., who graced this forum with his talent, vision, and belief that each new generation can make its own difference. So I think that speaks very well to the dreams and visions established by the people who started this place and will last for many, many generations to come. I want to thank the Dean, the President, Caroline and Ted, and you all for coming for a wonderful event. This has been one of the most inspirational days that I've spent, and we still have a reception and a dinner to go outside at the tent, and we have a little bit of humor and song for you as well there, so the evening is not over yet. Thank you all very much for coming.